Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network. I am your host today, BJ Cunningham. I'll be joined by friend and co-host Anthony DeBundo here in a second as we take a jaunt around the round of 16 for the Women's World Cup. But first, as a reminder, Wondergoal is presented by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. Sign up with the promo code ACTION to get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer. Bet $1 on any game, get $200 in bonus bets. Must be 21 years or older. Offers available in Colorado, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, and Iowa in the United States. Gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. It's been a little bit of a chaotic Women's World Cup here to get to the round of 16. We've seen quite a few upsets. One of the tournament favorites, Germany, crashed out. We can pat ourselves on the back a little bit for the Morocco to advance ticket. Me and Anthony both had it at 50-1, but it sets up for a very, very interesting round of 16. Teams like the United States and Spain did not win their group, but like we thought they did. So now it creates, especially for the United States, a great match here against Sweden. But let's set things up before we get into all the individual matches. Here are the future odds that are coming to us always by our friends at Bet365. England is now your tournament favorite at plus 275. The United States sitting at plus 450. Spain as well sitting at plus 450. France 7-1. Japan 8-1. The Netherlands 12-1. Australia also 12-1. Sweden still at 20-1, just like they were to begin the tournament. Colombia 25-1. Norway 66-1. Denmark is 100-1. Switzerland, Jamaica, and Nigeria are all 150-1, and South Africa and Morocco are both 250-1. And there's only one place we can naturally start here. The United States of America has a very, very difficult match against Sweden to open up here in the round of 16. The United States is a plus 120 favorite. Sweden sitting at plus 250 with the draw at plus 220. The United States is minus 175 to advance, while Sweden is plus 125 to advance at Bet365. Anthony, the United States, if you look at it through the the non-underlying lens, it looked like they were not that great in the group stage. They didn't dominate like everybody thought they did. Does that manifest itself here in the round of 16? Are they going to be able to get through here against Sweden, or do you think they're going home?
Yeah, I think the discourse has gotten a little crazy now. The United States defensively was still elite in the round of in the group stage. They conceded 0.7 expected goals in the entirety of the group stage, which was the second best number of any team. So I don't want to overreact to what was some certainly lackluster tactical displays, some really inefficient final third performances. But it also is concerning because it's not new. These are problems that have existed for the United States pretty much most of Vlatko Andonovski's tenure, and they haven't really looked towards solving that problem. It's not rocket science what the Dutch and the Portuguese did to the United States. They put an extra player in midfield, and the United States was unable to keep possession. They were really unable to sustain possession at all against Portugal, which is pretty alarming given the talent gap between the two nations. And, the bet was that when they won the ball, they could be very efficient and score, and they couldn't. They didn't create a ton of chances. They didn't create at the level you'd expect. It was a lot of half chances. No clear-cut scoring opportunities from the center of the penalty area. Alex Morgan was a little bit off. Sophia Smith in the NWSL plays centrally, occupies zone 14 right outside the penalty area, is so elite at bringing the ball into the box and scoring. We saw a little bit of that against Vietnam, but we didn't see any of that against the Dutch and the Portuguese. She was pretty much shifted into the wide areas, double-teamed, and not really a factor. And the result of that, gave room for Rose Lavelle to do some work in the middle, but Rose Lavelle is now suspended for this matchup against Sweden. So the Swedes are good on set pieces. They're experienced. They have players playing at top teams in Europe. They beat the United States 3-0 in the Olympics in 2021, which I thought was the first match where I was starting to be a little concerned long-term about the U.S. women's national team. And everybody's heard Carly Lloyd's comments. I think, it can be a little overblown. I don't think the U.S. is happy with the draw. They were, the post-match stuff. But I think that the tactical issue is one that's going to really be difficult to solve against another elite team. And this is a Swedish team that's better than the Dutch. It's better than Portugal.
Yep.
It has more attacking firepower. So I think that they're in real danger here of going out. And I think this is a little close to a coin flip than maybe the market is suggesting. And the market has moved towards Sweden as well. US Open -110. They're now plus money on the money line. They were as high as -200 to advance. They're now down to about -175, 160, like you mentioned. You can find Sweden +140 to advance. I like that. I think this is relatively close to a coin flip. U.S. slight favorites just based on talent and priors. They still count for something. But Sweden did a nice job in winning their group. They had some struggles at times, but I think that this is going to be a really interesting match. I'm excited for it. 5 a.m. Sunday, and it'll be really tight.
Yeah, I agree. So the one thing, obviously the United States talent-wise is better than everybody else in the world, but the gap, like we said before the World Cup, is really close. And this is going to be one of those matches where you kind of see it. Sweden was able to rest some of their players in the final match because they had already pretty much wrapped up the group. Rolfo sat for them. A couple other key players sat for them to get them rested here for this. While, the United States, the one thing that's been concerning for me is just, obviously they've created 7.8 expected goals in the group stage. A lot of that came against Vietnam, and especially against Netherlands, which is a good comparison to what, Sweden's obviously better than Netherlands, but it's the closest comparison that we have so far in this World Cup. I mean, the United States, even that flurry that they had at the end, they didn't create a shot with an XG over 0.15. Like, it was just a bunch of long range chances. And in total for the match, the United States against the Netherlands had 0.9 XG off of 18 shots. That's incredibly inefficient. And like you mentioned, with Rose Lavelle not being in the team because she's suspended now, that also works against the United States. They've obviously been just trying to funnel the ball to Sophia Smith, and it just hasn't been working. So Sweden is also this team that can be very versatile tactically. Like, they're a team that doesn't have to have the ball. They don't need to be this, like a team like Spain that needs to have possession. They can sit deep and they can counter, and they have very talented players who can do that. So I am with you. I'm going to be on Sweden to advance at +140. Unfortunately, I think the United States is going home. I mean, this is not a great matchup for them. And like we've already mentioned, the market is just still a little too high here on the United States.
Yeah, I've heard from a bunch of people that are just like, why are they still the second favorite? Like, do people really think that they could do this? They for sure could.
Yeah.
Like, keep in mind, this is a United States women's team that played a quarterfinal and a semifinal last year at last cycle at the World Cup, and was not better than France and England in those matches. They won them, but they weren't outplaying them. I mean, they came down to the moments. But this is the kind of team, given how they're constructed and given who they're relying on, with Morgan being past her prime and Smith and Rodman maybe not being, I don't want to say ready because that's cliche, but like not having that experience, that does matter. And I think that at the margins, this women's national team is just not as good, even if the underlying like meat and potato stuff is still good. They're 20th in pass completion rate in the group stage. We said that we had Anna Whitty on. We did a YouTube video with her discussing like this match, and she guessed 22nd. I thought she was going to guess way higher. And if you watch them, you can kind of pick up on it. They couldn't sequence together passes. This is supposed to be the best team in the world. I know that they're playing this more direct style, like quick strike, but you should still be able to do a much better job of keeping possession against Portugal than they were. 20th in passes completion rate is just alarming. And then outside the top 5 in box entries and carries. And so, it's just all kinds of concerning stuff about them. And they played a good second half against the Dutch, but it's not like they created it. Like you said, Rodman had the one big chance. They scored off the corner. It wasn't like they were, world beaters, chance after chance, peppering the goal. It didn't feel that way, even if they were able to really press.
Right. Here's a little trivia question for you, Anthony. So one of the metrics that we like to use, especially for evaluating teams about how possession dominant they are, and I understand, like you said, the United States is playing more direct. Do you want to guess how many 10+ pass sequences the United States has so far this World Cup?
Well, the Vietnam match, they probably had a lot. But they didn't even complete that many passes against Vietnam in a row. They were at like 65% in that match. I think I'll go with 12.
4.
Wow.
They are 20th in the World Cup.
That is crazy.
10+ pass sequences.
Yeah, that is
a little crazy. So I don't know if, even if you go back to that match in the Olympics in 2021, the possession was pretty even. It was basically 50-50, and Sweden outshot. United States had more XG. So like, Sweden
led most of that match.
Yeah.
They led early.
I
Yeah.
know this is not your normal United States that is just going to put a stranglehold on possession and just take over the match. So, and especially without Lavelle, like we've already mentioned, it's going to be very, very difficult for the United States to create a bunch of high quality chances here. So we are both on the
With that
Swedes.
being said, I mean, if you do like Sweden, I think that they're certainly live in the outright markets. We both have outright tickets, so I'm not adding more necessarily, but 20-1, when that being the pre-tournament pre-flop number, there's nothing that they to their own level that's made me think they're any different. Obviously the path is difficult, like Japan or Norway looms in that quarterfinal, and both of those teams are capable of beating Sweden. Probably Spain or the Dutch in the semis. Like it's not going to be easy, but at this point, at 20-1, I would only take 2 or 3 teams over the Swedes necessarily, in terms of on a neutral field. Probably 3, maybe 4 teams over Sweden.
Yeah.
Just true talent.
Yep, exactly. All right, let's move on to the very first match to open up the round of 16. This is Saturday at 1 a.m. Eastern time. Switzerland taking on Spain. Spain is a -250 favorite. Switzerland sitting at +750 on the money line with a draw at +350. Spain is -600 to advance. Switzerland is +400 to advance. I do have a pick on this game, but first, do you have any thoughts on what should be, I think, a really a slog of a match to begin the round of 16?
Yeah, well, this is Spanish heritage, right? They had 72% of the ball in the first half against Japan. They were down 2-0.
Yep.
It was just we may be just one hit wonders as a podcast, because at the Men's World Cup we rode Japan and Morocco as 2 of our favorite underdogs, and Japan wins the group. I think you had a 5-1. I was too cowardly to bet it. And then I think you took the money line. I was also too cowardly to bet it against Spain.
I went all in again.
Yeah, and look, they did it, and it was pretty routine. Now, I think the biggest question mark with that match, one, it's a little too on the nose. Like, yeah, Spain has that problem when they lose the ball, because they're so used to having the ball, they're immediately vulnerable in transition, and Japan ripped them apart. Japan also did score 4 goals on 5 shots on target and had like 1 XG. So, it wasn't as bad as the score line suggests. They didn't get played off the park by the Japanese.
Yeah.
And also I do wonder, like, what was the motivation for Spain? Were they focused on winning that match, or was it more of just like we're going to go out, we're going to play, we're going to get our players some minutes, we're going to see what happens, but if we lose, it's not really a big deal. Like, the draw is not meaningfully different. I'd argue the draw is easier now, because they get Switzerland instead of Norway, and they avoid the US-Sweden quarterfinal. So I think the draw kind of worked out for them, Spain, in terms of like trying to go deep now. They don't seem to have suffered any of the off the field issues that we talked about pre-tournament, and that could potentially have been an issue. Now, we don't know. We're not in the camp. Maybe this loss will unsettle them. Certainly possible when you get embarrassed like they did on the scoreline. But in terms of this matchup, like, Switzerland is also a team that wants the ball. Switzerland, it's kind of extremely similar to the men's teams, where it's like Switzerland wants to have the ball, Spain wants to have the ball, but Spain has much better players. They're going to be able to exert themselves. But in terms of the way Spain plays, it does just kind of make them vulnerable. So if you like Switzerland, I think you have to chase a price on them. Like, I don't want the +1.5 here. I want like to get it to extra time, or to win like a money line, or to advance. I want to chase the bigger price, because once Spain gets the lead, they're able to strangle the possession, and then Switzerland has to come out. Like, it's not a great matchup in theory, but I think Spain, just the nature of how they play makes them vulnerable in this kind of setting. Even though they have so much attacking talent, and their numbers in the first 2 matches, I know we don't really think much of Costa Rica and Zambia anymore, but like those 2 matches were so dominant between Japan and Spain both, that I have no bet here, but I'm interested to see this play out.
Yeah, I mean, I like the under 2.5. The best price you can find out is -120. Like you mentioned, Switzerland's a team that needs to have the ball, and they're not a team like Japan that can just rip teams apart in transition. Like, once they get the ball, they slow things down. They set up like, these hexagonal passing lanes to build up very slowly. And coming into the World Cup, they really struggled in the final third. And I understand they scored 2 goals against the Philippines and created 3.1, but they weren't that effective against Norway. I mean, they barely were able to create 1 expected goal on 8 shots. And then against New Zealand, they were just playing for a draw, and they did absolutely nothing. So coming into this match now, they are kind of a blend out of possession where they can come out and press. But so far this World Cup, I mean, their passes per defensive action is 13, which is one of the lowest in the entire World Cup. So I don't see them coming out and being like, we're going to press Spain, we're going to try to win the ball. Like, that's just not going to work. So I feel like they're going to sit very, very deeply, sit very compact. What's funny, Anthony, is that Switzerland, we talked about 10 plus pass sequences to the United States. The Swiss lead the World Cup. 38 10 plus pass sequences through the group stage, which is just crazy, just showing.
And yet they only scored 2 goals.
Exactly.
Both of them came against the Philippines.
And that's the point, is like, you can pass the ball all you want, but if you can't create high quality chances, it doesn't mean anything. Same thing with Spain. The match against Japan, they attempted 948 passes. They held 76% possession. They got 10 shots and 0.7 XG. Like, that's it.
Go pull up the exact stats of the Japan-Spain group stage match in the Men's World Cup. And exactly. You will laugh, because I think Spain completed like 1,000 passes that day, and they were all just Rodri passing it to whoever I'm forgetting who the other center back was, but it was just those two passing it back and forth. And then anytime they got into the Japan half, they lost the ball and then were immediately dangerous, like almost out. And like Morocco beat them, and not because they were, they got lucky in a way, but like Morocco sat really deep and just kind of absorbed it. And like if Switzerland can do that, I agree. Like, this Swiss team doesn't have much of an attack. I don't love their matchup here. So yeah, I see the look on the under, and you're kind of selling me on it now. So maybe I'll join.
So I'll be on the under. I mean, the thing is like, the pace of this match is going to be the slowest that I think you'll see throughout the entire round of 16. I don't think you're going to see anything that's just such a slow build-up style. And these two teams are going to play very, very conservatively. Once we get into this match, they're going to want to hold the ball, and maybe if Spain scores first, Switzerland will come out, but I don't really see that, given their style of play. So under 2.5 goals and -120 for me. Let's move on to the next match, Japan versus Norway. This is Saturday at 4 a.m. Eastern time. Japan, after a really impressive group stage from them, maybe the most impressive team of the group stage, they are sitting at -125. Norway is sitting at +375. The draw is at +250. Japan is -275 to advance. Norway sitting at 2-1 to advance. We are both aligned here on the same thing. I think we just both think that Japan has gotten a little overvalued based on what they did in the group stage.
Yeah, let's I'm going to shelve the Japan talk for now. Let's talk about Norway, because they had the first match of this World Cup. And to be honest, like, they were flat, they weren't great, but they didn't play bad. And like, you can now look back at every favorite in this tournament. Every one of them had a game, except Japan, where they did not look quite right. Like France, the first half against Jamaica looked terrible. Brazil had a really poor showing in their last match against Jamaica, and it cost them the tournament. Like, every team of the big favorites is allowed to have a stinker. Spain had one. England looked really sloppy against Haiti, only winning 1-0. We've talked about the United States at length. Sweden needed stoppage time to get past South Africa. So every team France, I already talked about France. So every team has had a moment where they haven't quite looked right. And for Norway, it really came in the first match. And I know that they lose the match. There was a controversial VAR decision where they were offside by like a toenail, and it could have been a 1-1 game. And if it had been a 1-1 game, none of us would have sat here and said, oh, what's wrong with Norway? They have defensive flaws, without a doubt. They conceded 1.7 XG to New Zealand, which is really a red flag. And Switzerland did get to 1 on them, but they were better than Switzerland. They were able to rout the Philippines without their top strikers. So we can't just throw out our priors. And our priors were that Norway was an overwhelming favorite to win their group, and they were pretty much even money to make the quarterfinals of this tournament. I think you bet it, right? You bet them like
+120
to make the quarters. And the market was expecting them to be a slight dog to Japan or Spain. Well, now they're a pretty sizable dog to Japan. And I think the market's just overreacted. So I'm going to play back on Norway +0.5. I think Japan, got a dream matchup with Spain in the final match of the group. Now they're everybody's darling. Best XG difference, fewest XG allowed, most XG created. Every stat you want to look at, from box entries to passes, they're the best team. Do you really think that? I don't.
No.
And I think the market is aware of it. Like, they're still the 6th betting favorite to win this tournament for a reason. The path is tough. But yeah, I like Norway +0.5. I think this game is very competitive. And I think it's going to be back and forth. I see this as like a 1-1 or a 2-2 kind of game. Get the extra time. Maybe Japan's experience wins out in the end, but they're still, overvalued at minus 130 on the money line, minus, 260 to advance. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, even if you come into this tournament, you look at the future odds to actually win it. I mean, Japan was 33-1 and Norway was 50-1. Like, it's not like there was this massive gap between them in the odds table. And, Norway was a team that I was like, I'm still trying to kind of figure them out. And I was digging a little deeper to them. I mean, their numbers through the group stage are still impressive. Like, they're still, they're averaging a little over 19 shots per 90, which is top 5 in the World Cup so far. And it's not like all of those just came against the Philippines. I believe they got 12 shots against New Zealand and 15 shots against Switzerland. So, and their average XG per shot has been 0.11, which is the best mark in this entire tournament. So, like, and then you dig in a little deeper and like, they have the most build-up attacks of anybody in this World Cup. They're top 5 in 10 plus pass sequences. Like, they are controlling the ball very, very well. And, and none of the teams that they played are going to be better than, what they'll face in Japan. But still, like, Norway is still, the underlying metrics are still very, very good for them. And Japan, like you said, I mean, they put up crazy numbers. Like, every stat we can point to says they've been the best team. I'm still kind of convinced that Spain, not through the match, but was just like, oh, once we got scored on once, it was like, oh, it's okay if we lose this one because we're clearly going to play Switzerland instead of Norway. And I think that's a very clear statement right there that they would rather play Swiss than Norway. So, the price has gotten too high here on Japan. Norway does play a very aggressive style that can lead them to being vulnerable in some transitional opportunities. It happened on the only goal against New Zealand. So we'll see who controls more possession here. I think it'll be Norway, but I like Norway to advance.
Definitely will be Norway.
Yep. I like Norway to advance. And I don't hate a look at Norway 66-1 to win this tournament. The path is very, very difficult.
Tough.
But it's tough. But
probably toughest of any team.
But in terms of the odds comparatively, like, would you rather have Norway at 66-1 or somebody like, I don't know, like Australia, like 12-1, like, considering the paths that they have. So I like Norway in this match and them 66-1 to win this entire tournament. All right, let's move on to the next match. The Netherlands taking on South Africa, surprisingly getting through to the round of 16, coming back to beat Italy. Netherlands is minus 400. South Africa is 8-1, and the draw is plus 550 on the 90-minute line. The Netherlands is 9-1 to advance. South Africa is plus 550 to advance. This match is on Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern time. We're kind of in the same corner here, where we kind of do like the South Africa team.
This is the USA slot. They got the 10 p.m. Fox was hoping to get that 10 p.m. slot Saturday night. Big turnout. It would have been USA, South Africa. It would have been probably an easy win. But nevertheless, the Dutch had other ideas. The Dutch were the deserving winners of the group. And it still hasn't really changed my opinion of them. They had 2 solid wins against Portugal, and obviously they rolled Vietnam. Vietnam looked like they were kind of done in terms of just kind of running out of gas. So, I bet against them in that match, and I'm probably going to bet against them here. I'm not going to pretend to have watched any of South Africa's matches because they did play at 3 a.m. every single time. So that group was really hard to tune in for. But the South Africans, like, just looking at their underlying profile, you can touch on this a little bit more than I can, but like their defensive solidity, they don't press very much. Like, they can sit deep and just make the Dutch try to beat them that way. They're better than Vietnam in a defensive block, and the Dutch want to have the ball. They will have a lot of the ball in this game. But the Dutch, for me, still on paper lack that quality in the final third without Miedema. And I think that this is the kind of match where it can show up and that they're a little bit more vulnerable. So the South Africans are an intriguing underdog here.
Yeah, I mean, they, listen, they didn't deserve to beat Italy. I mean, Italy, obviously had that terrible own goal, and they, the XG bared out that Italy should have won that match. But South Africa does play a style where they like to play very, very direct. They sit back in, 4-4-2, 2 low blocks. They haven't held over 40% possession in any of their matches in the group stage. While they are incredibly passive, because they do have the second lowest passes per defensive action, they, one of the stats, when we talk about, teams in the Premier League or whatever, who like to play in low blocks, one of the great stats that we like to use is final third to box entry conversion rate. So if you're going to play passive and you're going to let teams into your final third, how effective are you at keeping them out of your penalty area? South Africa's sitting at 24%. That's one of the best marks in this tournament, especially for a passive low block like them. And Netherlands, I agree with you. Like my opinion really hasn't changed on them just because, they beat Vietnam 7-0. Like the matches against both Portugal and the United States, they only created a combined 0.9 expected goals in those two matches. Like it wasn't, even the match against Portugal, I understand like they scored early and controlled it from start to finish, but without Miedema, like offensively, they really can't get margin against these decent teams that can play these type of low blocks. In South Africa, I mean, for what it's worth, we've got 3 African teams here in the round of 16. They were the champions of the Africa Cup of Nations last year. So I like them. The best price you can give there is, +2 at about -120, which I think is a decent price here. I don't really see the Netherlands getting decent margin against the South Africans.
Yeah, the Jill Ward Golden Boot campaign. She's got 3 and she's only 1 off the lead, and the leader is now out of the tournament. So that'll be interesting. But like Jill Ward, that's their leading goal scorer right now. And it's just like I don't really think that's gonna last. So the production from the Dutch they're piecing it together. I'd be very surprised if they were able to go give Spain a game. I think that's a really poor matchup for the Dutch.
Yeah, I agree.
If they were to get there.
Yep. Let's move on to Monday, 3:30 a.m. Eastern time. Your new tournament favorites, England taking on Nigeria. England is -334. Nigeria is sitting at 10-1 with the draw at +245 on the 90-minute line. England is -900 to advance, while Nigeria is +550. I'm passing on this match. I'm not, England has been kind of up and down throughout this World Cup. Like they weren't that great against Haiti. They still weren't that impressive against Denmark. And then they put 6 past China in the final match, but they now have more injuries to deal with. So you kind of like a look here on Nigeria.
Yeah, this is an English team that, like, coming into the tournament with everybody healthy, should have been the favorite. But they lost their top center back, their top striker. They're losing more players now. Leah Williamson out as well. Like there's just a lot to be concerned about with this team. And I understand that they're now the tournament favorite. That's mostly because of the path. Like they're going to get Nigeria and then either Colombia or Jamaica. And I would be stunned if they didn't make the semifinals, but I'd be stunned if Nigeria didn't give them a game too. I think Nigeria +1.5 is what I've already bet. And I like it here. -110. The Nigerians showed in their 2 group matches against Australia and Canada that they're able to play up against better teams, sit deep, defend, and not concede high quality chances. And that, for me, is enough for me to believe. They conceded less than 1 non-penalty XG to Canada. And then, they conceded at 2.2 in the end to Australia, but most of it came after they were already up 3-1. So at the time of them going up 3-1, 60 minutes into the game, the XG, they only conceded 0.7. So, and a lot of it came on really low quality shots from the Aussies in the first half of that game. I think England could have similar issues to breaking them down. I think it's going to be a competitive match. And so I will ride with the Nigerians +1.5. Oh, Shola too. Like she wasn't really fit for that match against Australia. She came off the bench. She looked fitter and played more in the last match against Ireland, and makes me feel like she's kind of rounding into form here. And just the way they want to play with her as the striker, like she's probably the best attacking player on the pitch. So they're going to have a chance to sneak one on the counter. So if you like an 8-1, it's probably it is my favorite, like, long shot of all these crazy underdogs to get out of this group. And it's Nigeria, and part of it's the pedigree and manager. And one of the main reasons we were concerned was that there were some off the field things going on with the Confederation, but they seem to have figured those things out, or at least put them aside for this World Cup. So the Nigerians are my favorite of the, like, big dogs, because I don't really count Norway and Sweden as, like, big underdogs here.
Yeah, I agree.
It's been the underdog World Cup too. Like,
it has been.
Dog prices have been cashing in.
There's been so many upsets so far.
I think a lot of it is just the market's struggling to price some of these teams. There's not as much.
Information. I mean, here's a different discussion. It's just that, like, the women's game is a lot different than the men's game, because the reality is that, more money is being poured into the game, and there's this not really say I would like disparity, but like not this cross-pollination of leagues where you have the United States and a lot of players playing the NWSL who just don't play against these teams in Europe in the Women's Super League, whether it be La Liga or whatever it is. And the market coming into this, I think, just struggled to price, like you said, some of these smaller nations that are only playing friendlies against some of these bigger sides. I mean, if you look at a team like, we'll get to them in a second, but a team like Jamaica, they got routed in every friendly against good competition coming into this World Cup, and they haven't conceded yet. So it's been strange. I know we'll get to them in a second. Don't worry, we'll get to them. It's just, but yeah, I mean, it's been the World Cup of the underdog. So let's move on to one of the tournament hosts, Australia. They're taking on Denmark on Monday at 6:30 a.m. Eastern time. Australia is at -118. Denmark at +375 at the draw at +240. Australia is -250 to advance, with Denmark sitting at +175. I don't really have anything on this match. I'm still struggling to kind of figure out these teams. I don't know if Sam Kerr is actually going to play for Australia in this match. She sat on the bench for all 90 minutes in their final match against Canada. And yeah, just I don't know what to make of Denmark. Like, they just weren't impressive at all against China. They got pretty much ran over by England, and then they dominated a Haiti team that looked like they kind of ran out of gas towards the end. But I don't have anything.
I didn't even think they were that dominant. Like, I watched the whole match. Yeah. Like, the first 70 minutes were pretty even for me.
Yeah,
they got the penalty, and then like it was pretty even. Haiti had better of the chances early in the second half, and then like once Haiti had to really open up and chase the goal, then Denmark unfortunately put that 100-minute goal on us because we had 1.5, but also like had a few other chances and like was just offside and just a foul. So, but yeah, like, what's Denmark? Because what's Australia? This is the hardest match for me. I don't really have a bet here. I lean toward Australia if you made me bet it, but I don't want to bet them unless I know the Kerr situation, because like, she didn't play and she missed the first 2 matches. They ruled her out immediately for the first 2 matches. Then they said she is available for the third match in some capacity, but she didn't start. And then they were up big at half, so they didn't bring her on. But if they were, like, if she were really fit enough and they were trying to build her fitness, wouldn't they get her out there for 20 minutes?
I don't know. Maybe they just
run around. Like, that's the thing for me too. It's like, well, why are they, not getting her minutes? Are they worried about re-injury, or are they like, and the fact they didn't get her out there, does that mean that she's not going to be 100% come this match? Because if she's not, it's just like not that good of an Australia team. Like, their attack was pretty mid the first 2 games against Ireland and Nigeria, and then they had a great game against Canada, who proved to be a little overvalued and overrated. But like, we can't really see the elite upside with this team without her. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern. Like I said, I can't really bet Denmark here, but I would lean toward the Aussies. At home, -115. Like,
this
kind of says these 2 teams are pretty comparable. I'm not sure about that.
I mean, it's really going to come down to both these teams are really, really good in wide areas. Like, Denmark has great fullbacks. Same thing with Australia. Australia has great wide midfielders. But a lot of what Australia is designed around is, they play out of a 4-4-2. They like to take the ball out wide and swinging crosses to Sam Kerr. Well, when she's not in the middle of the pitch, like, that becomes kind of a problem. And you kind of saw that, especially in their first match against Ireland. Like, they weren't that impressive. They got the penalty, but they failed to create over 1, non-penalty XG. And then, the match against Nigeria got chaotic and they got exposed in transition. And it's a very weird match. And I don't know what to make of these 2 teams. So I am passing as well. All right, let's move on to, well, what should have been a little bit of a different match. I think this should have been Germany versus Brazil, but instead we get Colombia versus Jamaica.
Yeah, if the chalk had held, it would have been Brazil, Germany.
Yeah.
Or Germany, France.
Yep.
Yeah.
Instead. So Colombia is a +105 favorite. Jamaica sitting at 3-1 with the draw at +250. Colombia is -200 to advance, with Japan at +150 to advance. I like the over here.
Another Colombia over for BJ.
Yeah, another Colombia over for me. I'll let you go first because I know you kind of like Colombia in this. Then I'll talk about why I like an over for 2 teams that just fail to score.
Yeah, I'm thinking about laying it with Colombia here. I love Caicedo. I've actually watched all of their matches. Group H, I've kind of had a feeling would be an electric factory, and the times were a little more conducive to tuning in. So I have watched all of the Colombia matches. And Caicedo and Myra have been so good in attack, just like running at people and kind of being destructive. And I think this Jamaican team, like, credit to them for defending deep and defending effectively. They surprised France in the first match. They looked very average against Panama. And then, like, Brazil was just flat. Like, they haven't got conceded a goal, but they've conceded like 400.8 XG. Like, it hasn't been like this like dominant defensive showing. They've only scored one goal. Like, they're super lucky to be here. And I think Colombia is just like a much more talented team overall and probably doesn't have a ton of problems here. Like, Shaw's the big difference maker on paper, but like, she hasn't been good either.
Yeah.
Like, they haven't really got anything out of them. So I'm kind of just out on this Jamaican team. I think their Linsanity run may come to an end here. But I don't necessarily want to lay the 200, but I kind of think this is a little bit short.
Yeah, I like I like over 2 goals or -115. It's the best price you can find. I know it hasn't manifested itself yet, and even if you look at the XG, it hasn't bared itself out. But Colombia's style of play is just so fun to watch. Like, it is just so chaotic, high pressing. Once they lose the ball, like they have, you mentioned Maya and Caicedo, like they are so good at
Germany,
counter
Colombia
pressing.
was awesome.
It was, yeah, they're so good at counter pressing and everything, and that's where I think it leads me towards, more of a bet on Colombia here as opposed to the over, where it's just like, all right, well, how is Jamaica going to be actually able to play out of the back? Because like, if you look at the match with Colombia against South Korea, which is, I think, a good comparison here, like South Korea could not get out of their own end for many times. And then once they did, there was just acres of space and they just couldn't, do anything with it. Jamaica they're lucky to be here. I mean, they haven't conceded a goal they've had 4.1 expected goals. Their keeper has a +2.4 post shot XG plus minus in 3 matches. Like, that's insane. But the one thing keeps me coming back to the over is we haven't seen what Jamaica is like when they're playing from behind. They've been very fortunate to have 0-0 game states or even playing from ahead against Panama, and they've been able to sit deep and they haven't had to come out and press. And then coming to this tournament, they weren't a high pressing team. They were more of a mid block, stay very, very compact. And you mentioned Shaw, I'm interested to see how she gets going in this match specifically, especially if they do fall behind, because if you remember, especially against France, they were just kind of trying to defend for their lives that entire second half, and they couldn't get out of their own final third. Then she gets, the second yellow card, gets suspended versus the only team where they actually were going to control possession and be able to attack effectively against Panama. And then the final match, they were just, again, trying to hold on for dear life against Brazil and not really, trying very hard to get forward. So she is a very, very interesting piece in this because of how aggressive Colombia is with their counter pressing, and Jamaica does like to play very, very direct. So I could see Jamaica sneaking one in here, but I think over 2 is always quite low with Colombia. I mean, I understand I understand that the score lines and the XG have not manifested out, but if you watch their matches, it is chaos for all 90 minutes. So I do like over 2 goals at -115. All right, let's move on to the final match.
Seeing a +125, both teams to score out there.
Yeah.
That's intriguing to me, just because I do agree with you. Like, the longer this stays 0-0, the longer the teams are incentivized to keep it 0-0. The minute the first goal goes in, that's when I think, maybe see like the problems both teams have get exposed, so like the other team can fight their way back into this.
Yep.
So like maybe +125, both teams to score.
Yeah. Or if you want to chase over 2.5 is +160. If you want to chase that price,
right. I could also see 1-1 too, though. That's the thing. Yeah. So I'm really torn on this game, but like I said, Colombia, man, fun to watch.
They're fun.
I think probably our most wrong team, because we were kind of.
Oh, we were. Yep.
I mean, if you had told me Morocco was advancing, I would have told you. I would have made Colombia like -2,000 to not advance. If you just told me Morocco advanced out of this group, what are Colombia's odds of advancing? I would have said like, they didn't advance. They were -2,000. They stunk like we all thought. Yeah. And like, they advanced with freaking Morocco. What a team.
Exactly.
How about those guys?
All right. Well, speaking of Morocco, let's get to our final match here. France and Hervé Bernard taking on Morocco here to the round of 16. France is sitting at -600. Morocco is 16-1. The draw sitting at 7-1 on the 90-minute line. France is -1,600 to advance. Morocco 9-1 to advance. I have nothing on this match. I mean, I was happy for our France future that the things kind of broke a little bit better because it looked like they were going to play Germany here in the round of 16, and that was going to ruin everything. What we talked about before the tournament about how France was going to get the second place team in Group H, and they would have had an easy matchup. But hey, that's how it turned out. They get Morocco here. I like the matchup for them. I mean, I can't. I don't know if I can stomach another bet on Morocco here, especially against the attacking firepower that Spain has had. But I'll let you go first. But I don't hate a look on the under.
Yeah, no thanks on the under for me. France, you can see a world where France maybe their attacking production. I've seen all of their matches too. Like their attacking production is a little bit. There's some error in those numbers. They got a couple penalties against Panama, a couple gifts against Panama. Scored off a set piece against Brazil to win it late. Looked sluggish against Jamaica. Like I don't think France has found its top gear by any stretch, but they also rested Renard and Les Sommer in that last match and didn't have to play them. And I think it's a huge benefit with Diani and Les Sommer now. This is much more the attacking firepower than South Korea or Colombia have, and this is still a Morocco team that gave up 6 to Germany.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just happily pass, watch this match, root on my Blues, our Blues, and hopefully we can get maybe a Denmark upset and get to the semifinal, which is really all you can hope for. Get to the semis and then win a couple coin flips.
Yep. So I don't hate a look on the under here just because of the fact that Morocco, I mean, credit to them for getting to this point. Like they won the XG battle against both Colombia and South Korea like they deserved. They were the better team in both of those matches. They obviously did concede 6 goals to Germany, but that was only off 2.4 expected goals. So they've only conceded 4.2 expected goals throughout the group stage, which coming into the tournament, you would have said like, yeah, that's not too bad for a team like Morocco, even though they are in this easy group. And France, like you said, like they had a lot of gifts against Panama, but they were inefficient in front of net against both Jamaica and even really Brazil. But France is just this like dominant, slow possession build-up style team, and which I think is going to create a very, very low, sluggish pace type match with Morocco sitting very deep. I don't see Morocco coming out and pressing them too much. So under 3 goals is sitting at plus 108 right now is the best price you can find. I really don't hate that. I think Morocco can keep France out here for at least the first half. I think it'll be very, very, I think both teams will play very, very conservatively in the first half, similar to what you saw with France and Jamaica, and then France will probably turn it on in the second half. But I'm struggling to kind of figure out France, like you said, like they haven't hit their top gear yet. Like even the match against Brazil wasn't that impressive.
I thought they were good against Brazil. But Brazil had a bunch of chances late that kind of like inflated the XG. They had like 2 huge chances, but I thought like on net they were the better team for like 70 minutes of that match.
Yeah, it's just tough. So it's only a look on the under. I haven't played it yet. You can follow me in the Action Work app. Maybe if we get. And we won't get this, but if it somehow gets to like 3.5 at a decent price, maybe I'll play it. But other than that, it's a pass for me. So that'll do it for the round of 16. Thank you all for tuning in. You can tune into all of our other wonderful podcasts. If you're interested in the men's club season, me, Anthony, and our other co-host Michael Leboff did an episode breaking down all the futures for the Premier League. We have another episode coming out next week with our good buddy Alon Shapiro from the FML FPL pod, where we did our Premier League point total draft like we did last season. Me and Anthony on Monday, well, I guess it'll be coming out Tuesday. We'll be going through all the rest of the European leagues and giving out our favorite futures there. We'll be back again for the quarterfinals, I believe on Thursday, that will be coming out. And our first match week pod of the season will also be coming out on Thursday, where we go through the Premier League and the rest of Europe. Busy times for Wondergoal right now. But it's all a ton of fun because the world's game just keeps on going every single week. So thank you all for listening to Wondergoal. Thank you to our sponsors at Bet365, and we'll see you all on the other side, and good luck with your wagers.